Hello and welcome to Family Matters. Thank you so much for joining us. On this show, we discuss various issues that affect human relations. And to help me with this, as usual, it's Mike and Liz. Welcome.
Thank you, Sunny.
Today, we're discussing managing conflict in families. So, Liz, what is conflict?
Conflict, Sunny, is power struggles over differences, where one person wants to exert their power over the other person.
Okay. And Mike?
Yeah, this could be struggle of opinion.
Yes.
Or of viewpoint or a decision that must be made.
Now, why are we talking about managing conflict? Why can't we say how not to have conflict or how to get rid of conflict? Why do we need conflict? Why are we managing this?
I wish life could be like that.
Yeah.
But the truth of the matter is conflict is inevitable.
Yes.
We are different people. Just by being different,
yes,
it means we have things that we look upon in a different way. Something that I may like, you may not like it.
Yes.
So the most important thing is how to manage those differences.
Yes.
Because we can't resolve them. We can't totally avoid them. It's not very possible.
Mike, you're a pastor. Why can't you pray conflict away? Just, it mustn't be there.
For as long as we are rational beings with a brain that can think, we'll always think differently on issues.
Right.
So for that very reason, like she says, conflict then is inevitable.
Yes.
Unless if you want to treat people like robots, that must not think they are just programmed. But if you are dealing with the rational minds, there's always bound to be conflict.
Right.
You'll discover that it is because of conflict that we can look at things differently.
Of course.
Yes.
Not every conflict is bad.
Yes.
There is conflict that then leads you into relooking at this situation in a manner that ends up being constructive. So if we all try to avoid it, it means we are now robots. We are no longer thinking. We are no longer developmental. Because with development, you are bound to have conflicts on the way.
So, like for instance, there are some corners of the world where people say we are under dictatorship.
Yes.
Dictatorship simply works to have a world where there's no conflict. I say it, you do it.
You've got no choice.
You have no choice.
Yes.
But that kind of conflict, then in people's hearts, they still have that anger inside them. You get the point, but they cannot express it. And people feel like, hey, there's peace in this country when people are just busy rebelling in their hearts.
Right.
Actually, I've heard someone giving a joke where conflict can be manifested as if it's not there, but it's there.
Right.
A certain student in class was forced by the teacher to say, Samson, sit down. And Samson says, I don't want to sit down. And then says, I'm telling you, Samson, you better sit down. I'm the class teacher and you have to obey. And then Samson sat down and says, teacher, I am sitting down, but in my heart, I am standing up.
Yes, that's true. So even if you force it, but if you're not eating mentally,
yes, it will not work.
It doesn't help.
Yes.
Now looking at that, what are the different, obviously there must be different types of conflict.
Yes.
What are some of these types that we have?
There are a number of types of conflict.
Yes.
There is one that is called transformational conflict, which is a type where you go through a conflict and then you are able to learn from it and it develops you and makes you be a better person.
Okay.
There's also another type of conflict that is personality conflict, where under normal circumstances, it's not supposed to be even an issue, but it is. An issue, conflict on personality is one that people should just look at and know that I can never be Sunny. I have my own way of running things. And if I want to change Sunny, it will be a problem. If I want to change his personality to do things the way I do things, that's a problem.
Let me just take you back on transformational conflicts. Can you just give me examples of that? Like in a family, how would that be?
Okay, one of the examples could be maybe today we had problems with our relationship with Mike.
Yes.
He has done infidelity.
Right.
And then we talk about it. And then after discussing it, Mike gives up that in the secret affair, it now becomes his way of coming back to having a happy life.
Okay.
And then the two of us, I forgive him. That conflict of which was initiated because of unfaithfulness has made him to transform, to change from that behavior that he had to
become
being a
better-
trust with someone.
Yeah, but this does not suggest have a secret affair.
Yeah.
Yes. So what happens, like the example that she is using,
Yes.
is that we go through this conflict of, you stop this, I don't like this, I can go if you continue like this, we fight over this. But at the end of the day, when we make a breakthrough, our relationship remains sweeter and better like never before.
Right.
That's transformation.
Yes. In other types as well, further?
The other type of conflict is what we call destructive
Yes.
Right.
conflict, where someone is busy hitting furniture, you throw tantrums, you are so angry and so bitter about whatever issue is on the ground. Instead of addressing the issue, you are busy destroying things, so that becomes destructive
Okay.
conflict.
Like further on that issue?
Yeah, to add to that, if the manner of handling our differences and our challenges lead to the loss of relationships, the parent-child relationship is sacrificed in the fight, or the husband-wife, the marriage is sacrificed, property is sacrificed. This is exactly what Liz is talking about.
Okay.
When conflict gets to a point where it is destructive, it destroys relationships, it destroys property, it destroys our image as people, and everything is sacrificed in the process, I think we'll have gone too far.
Yes. Are there any other thoughts on conflicts?
Yeah, there are some other thoughts, and
Yes.
I think Mike can add on that.
Okay.
Yes, I think conflict tends to take a journey.
Okay.
There is a time when it is concealed, it's not showing, but it is there. Then comes a time when it is perceived. It's kind of perceived. You know, people think like it's there. They can see signs of it, but people are not getting to talk about it. And then there's a time when it manifests itself and people are able to share emotional feelings to say, honey, I'm not happy with this and so forth. And then there's a time when it takes an action route where it now becomes action and people are now quarreling over it, people are now fighting over it and so forth. So there's a progression from being concealed to an action type.
Yes.
Yes.
Talking about manifestations, how do you see that there's conflict in this family?
I think it's conflict sometimes can be very open.
Yeah,
The way people talk, the harsh words that are being used,
yeah.
and the way people blame one another. These reflect that there is conflict within this family, especially when it is destructive conflict where people end up even throwing, beating one another, physically abuse, and all those things. It reflects that there is some conflict within this family.
Yes, we also want to run away from making it feel like conflict is always rough, and it manifests itself with tears and pain and blows.
Okay.
Sometimes it is calm, but people are in deep disagreement over an issue. People may actually be smiling,
Yeah.
and yet they are mature enough, they know how to hold their emotions, and they know how to express themselves, but you can tell these guys are not in agreement over an issue.
Right.
But they are not being like rough and throwing out tantrums and stuff like that.
And Liz, talking from a psychological perspective, I want to ask you, because obviously even if you're in family you're different. You're all different individuals.
Yeah.
And you've got different personalities, different characters, and that can cause issues. How does that contribute to conflicts within family members?
Within family members, different personalities can be such that the other person likes noise.
Yes.
A sanguine, for example, that's a personality.
Like me, I enjoy
A
noise.
temperament where someone is jovial overly and they don't take life very serious. Other family members will be looking at an issue and they are so serious about this issue, and this guy sort of rubs it off. That can cause conflict because of different ways of personalities as you view at an issue.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, some people will say, yes, we are serious, and they are busy joking. It frustrates
Yes.
other people, and there can be a conflict because of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Let me also add to say, in terms of personality differences, you may have the husband may be a people's person. He enjoys it when there are people around him. And so
Yes.
he's got a lot of buddies and the friends visit the house. And you may have a wife who is withdrawn and she does not like to be in groups. And 3 people are too much for her to handle. And she would rather have one person at a time. And sometimes just one loyal friend. Why play with everyone in this town? Why can't you not stick to just one person or 2 people? But this other guy is the life of the party. He wants to enjoy everybody in the community and so forth. And some of these things here can really cause a challenge in marriage and also in the family. And come to diet.
Yes.
Somebody may enjoy spinach. And
Yeah.
somebody does not even want to see spinach
Of course.
as part of their meal.
Yeah.
They don't want to see it. And you may force each other, you eat this, you whatever, so I'm not going to cook and whatever. People can fight over things. So this is why we are saying, when it comes to personality differences, there are certain conflicts that don't need to be solved. You
Okay.
simply need to accept that Mike has this temperament and Liz has this disposition. God made us differently, and let us accept each other as God has made. If you become a law unto one another,
Yes.
you spend your whole life fighting over issues that you should not fight over.
Well, talking about being a law unto one another, then what happens with conflicts between parents and children? Because parents are the law, to put it under my roof.
Exactly.
This is what happens. So how
Yeah.
do you deal with conflicts between parents and children and still maintain a respectable relationship?
Yeah.
Taking from the example that you have just given, that parents are law,
Yeah.
I want to say from the onset, each home must have rules, regulations, and standards that direct and guide how things are done within that family.
Yes.
But the moment you now have children, as they grow, you need to relook at those values, those standards, so that you allow them to also input and be participatory, so that they also own these rules and
Yes.
these regulations, because they are doing it together. When you then do it together, when one goes out of it, you can all say, didn't we agree that this is how we run things? So if children and parents operate at a level of good communication, it helps them to be able to minimize conflicts of the nature that you have just said, that
Yes.
parents are a law.
Yeah.
Expect parents to set rules, but
Yes.
at a certain age, as children grow, involve them in setting some of the rules and regulations of the family.
Okay, Mike, your 2 seconds of thoughts before we go to a break.
Yes. I think message to all men
Yeah.
who God says you are head of the family. Sometimes being head of the family means I set the rules, everybody obeys. I think that is the seedbed of conflict in the family.
Okay. I think let's go to a break. Then when we come back, we'll just discuss further on how we can now manage conflicts
Yes.
within families. Please don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Family Matters. If you've just joined us, we're discussing managing conflict in families. Mike, before the break, we're talking about the father being the head of the house, the one who puts the rules in the house, and I am the man in this house. You listen to me.
Yes,
How
yes,
do
yes.
we solve this?
Yes, I think as men, if we incorporate our wives and our children into coming up with the rules of the house, we are not ceasing being heads of families. We still remain, we are coordinators to make sure that the family operates productively.
Right. Liz, do you have anything to share on that? Because sometimes we have men who want to remind you that, look, I am the husband in this house, I am the father. I always say that when a person is the president of a country, you don't hear them going around reminding everybody that, look, I'm the president of, let's just say, South Africa, for instance, because we know automatically by your duties and your roles that you're the president.
Yeah.
The moment he must just say, I'm the president, then he's not doing something right. So, Liz,
You are right, Sunny.
Yeah.
I think it's important for whoever, the father, to be able to act his role more than talking it.
Yes.
To live by example, so that whatever he is saying, this is how we live within this home, he too has to abide by that. And the children and the wife will also be able to see that daddy is an example and they live on that.
Yeah.
I'm saying heads, it simply means responsibility.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Being able to uphold those responsibilities
Yes.
that he is supposed to guide this family into the path that is godly and into a path that is constructive.
Now, talking about now conflicts and managing them, I think now we must discuss how we can manage these conflicts productively. I'm a kind of character who, if I care about you as a friend or the relationship, I want to discuss it. I don't believe that if the kitchen is hot, I must get out. I believe that let's talk about this thing because I care about, I want to maintain this.
Exactly.
If I walk away, it means I'm not bothered.
Yeah.
You didn't really mean much to me. That's how
Yeah.
I manage my conflicts.
Yes.
What are some principles that you can share of how we can productively manage conflicts within families?
I think the first and foremost thing, even though I'm not putting them in
Of course.
in a rank,
Right.
it is to be able to detect early signs of problems
Yes.
and be able to address them without any fear. Because you know what, Sunny, if we see some tendencies of wrong habit going on or the way we do things going on and we shovel it under the shelf, by the time we are full, we burst, and you find there is so much pain that you can end up inflicting upon one another because you were not discussing these issues and managing them without having to put them under the shelves.
Yeah, yeah. Mike?
I think I spent half of our marriage struggling over conflict. We are pastors. We should not differ over this. Why this? I think there's a demon, there's a devil who is inside this marriage, and this one says, I don't think you deserve to be a pastor. I also say, I think I should have married somebody else. And so why is it that we're always quarreling over this, fighting over this, and so forth?
Yeah.
But I want to tell you, Liz and me are living in our sweetest era where we have come to realize
Yes.
conflict is normal.
Yes.
Apart from praying for it, it is one thing that helps solve conflict is to treat it as something that is normal. Lovers quarrel. Lovers sometimes don't see eye to eye on a thing. So I really, for me, it's very important to treat conflict as something that is normal.
You know, I'm glad that you're saying that because I've discovered that with most couples, even older ones especially,
Yes.
in the church,
Yes.
they want to give us the impression that
Yeah,
everything is
yeah.
rosy, everything is
Yeah,
beautiful,
no,
nothing ever
no,
goes wrong in
no.
this house. So I'm glad that you're bringing
Yes.
that up, please.
You know, it's very important to be realistic.
Yes.
When you see a conflict in the family, one good way of doing it is address the issue and not the person.
Yes.
Right.
Where you are supposed to say, I am not happy, using the I language, I am not happy because of the lying that is taking place in this house. I am not saying you are a liar, but I'm saying I'm not happy because of the lies
That is
that are
taking
taking
place,
place. I'm addressing the lies here and not the
Not
person.
the person, yes.
So when I do that, I help my other child or my husband or whoever in the family to look at what they say when they want to say something and avoid lies. So address the issue and not the person, so that at the end of the day, no one gets to defend their ego. Because if you address me and you blame me, I am a human being.
Exactly.
Of course.
I'm
Exactly.
bound to protect myself
Get defensive.
and become defensive. But if you address the issue, I can also look at it and then be able to say, it's true, I think what I've done was not proper.
Yes.
And you know what you're saying is very important because when you use the word I, what you're saying is valid. It's
Yeah.
what you are feeling, it's what you have gone through, and nobody can
True.
dispute that. So
Yes.
it's very important, Mike.
Yes. The other point is you need to know when to stop.
Right.
I think conflict by its very nature, it's emotionally volatile. Emotional pressure builds in as you discuss. you need to have emotional intelligence to be able to tell that the level where we have now reached, we are no longer being productive in handling this matter. Why don't we take time out, stop here, and come back when we are sober?
Yes.
Well,
I
okay.
also want to say, I think in every conflict, be solution-oriented. Why are we talking about this issue? What is
Exactly.
our aim?
Yes.
Let us be solution-driven so that we are not just mumbling and talking.
Yeah.
We are trying to address and come up with a constructive solution that makes everyone happy.
Yeah, you're not talking about being sober. I heard of a couple who, when they're having an argument or discussing a conflict, as you're putting it, they would have a pause moment where they'll say, let's pause. We'll discuss this later on when our tempers have cooled down, because then you can think rationally and you can say things that you actually want to harm somebody else.
Actually, it leads to another point where we are saying, which is closely related to that, where we say sleep over an issue.
Right.
When you are so heated up and you are no longer thinking straight, don't force yourself to make an important decision when you are still emotionally high.
Yes.
Sleep over an issue. When people are in their blankets, they will reminisce and they'll discover points where they need to clarify. When they wake up in the morning, you discover, the problem has solved itself because people slept over it.
Yes.
I also want to say, much as we sleep over an issue, let us not allow it to die a natural death.
Exactly.
Let us address it. Because some people may sleep over an issue and never come to address it. And that's why you'll then find we pile up issues. So it is important to give yourself a break and ponder over the issue, but come back to the drawing table to address that issue effectively.
Yes. Right?
Yes. Another challenge in conflict management is an issue where we are divided into the losers and the winners.
Okay.
You have those that are fighting hard to win. And you have those that are also being pushed to a point where they must submit, they must lose. So when we are discussing an issue on the basis of win-lose, I will not solve anything because nobody wants to lose. Everybody will want to win. So at times, it's very important when we are discussing issues to see that at the end of our discussion, everybody is a winner. The relationship must win at the end of the day. Yes.
Liz, there's something I want to just ask you before you go on your next point. Managing conflict between parents and children. Is there a point in time where you don't have to manage a conflict with the whip or the belt? Because there's, maybe you get instances where somebody's now a teenager and they can speak, they can now talk, they can reason, but you still want to use a belt. How do we manage conflict in such cases between the parents and the child?
You know, that question, it has so much conflict. Today we have what are called child rights, where when you use a whip, you may be quoted to have abused this child. But yet at the same time, you need to discipline your child. Actually, from the Bible, it says, spare a rod and spoil a child. From the book of Proverbs, it advocates that we do so. So there is difference between disciplining and punishing a child.
Yes.
So you need to be able to sit down and ask yourself, when I'm going to talk to this child, am I for punishment or I am for discipline?
Okay.
Because discipline can be very painful, but it is a behavior change at the end.
Yes.
Punishment can only be a whip that only instills fear, and it may never result into any behavior change except making this child fear. So you need to be able to know what you are really doing. And I am saying at some age, even the young children, you need to talk to them. The Bible in Isaiah 1 verse 8, it says, come, let us reason together. Meaning as a family, husband and wife, fathers and their children and mothers, we need to sit down and talk over an issue in a more constructive manner, especially without blaming and casting someone to say you are the always problem solver. You need to be able to sit down and talk.
Yes.
But incidences where you have talked and it doesn't work, with the young children, you need to go back and then use a whip, which is not a dangerous thing, but a whip, and know the areas where you have to whip the child with a measurement. There are measurements that are supposed to be there on the type of a stick that you're
Yes.
going to use that does not hurt this child.
Yes.
So it's important to use your rod,
Yes.
but use the right rod, the right
rate.
size.
Yes, Mike.
Yes. So I also want to just bring a caution
Yes.
that if you are to spank a child, whatever method you are going to use, consult the rules of your land
Yes.
that relate to that, so that at least you don't want to say, oh, Mrs. Ngwaru says you can do this, or Pastor Ngwaru said you can do this.
Yes.
You need to consult the rules of the land.
Yes.
Conflict management and conflict resolution is a negotiation skill.
Right.
It's a negotiation skill. And you are using it to train. You have these teenagers in your house. You cannot spank them anymore. You can't shout to them. They treat themselves as adults when it suits them. They feel like they're children when it suits them. You are training them also when they leave your house. They need to know how to deal with their own conflicts
Yes,
out there.
outside.
And so home becomes a training where we are socialized on how do I negotiate when I'm going through a challenge with other people.
Liz, any other tips on how we can manage conflicts productively?
I think it's very, very important for one to know your temperaments
Right.
as a person,
Yeah.
so that you are able to also know what triggers you. Because if you don't know yourself, you are bound to inflict pain on others without you,
Yeah.
which will then result into destructive conflict.
Yeah.
So within the family, let us know one another to be able to see how best we can help this person.
Yes.
And the issue of addressing a conflict or a problem when you are all angry,
Yes.
it becomes so so difficult, because you may not address the issue. You may end up addressing each other, and you end up fighting at the end of the day.
Of course, Mike, your final words on conflicts in families, how to manage them productively?
God is a conflict manager.
Right.
When we invite him into our family, he will help us to solve conflict better. And the prayer moves mountains. It softens difficult hearts. So I don't know, whatever we have said before is important, but I think the oil of the engine comes when we use prayer and God is invited. We can solve things better when God is there.
Okay. Liz, your final words?
I think we should know that conflict is inevitable. It can develop us or destroy us. The most important thing is to decide for conflict to build us rather than to divide us in the manner that we manage it.
So you can choose which side you want to go.
Yes.
Thank you so much for this discussion. I'm sure that many people have learned. I personally now know I must go and check what temperament. I know I'm a mixture of everything, maybe the most complex kind of character, but I think you can learn and try and see how others see you and try and improve from then on.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you've learned one or two things to help you in your character development. Until next time, God bless.